Beneath the sun-baked island of Malta, hidden under layers of limestone and earth, lies a subterranean labyrinth that has both baffled and mesmerized archaeologists for over a century, the Hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni. Discovered by accident in 1902 when workers digging a foundation stumbled upon its silent chambers, the Hypogeum immediately revealed a portal to a world frozen in time, a place where human hands had carved out sanctuaries from the bedrock more than 5,000 years ago, during the Neolithic period. Its creators remain cloaked in mystery. We know them only through the meticulous precision of their work, their intimate understanding of stone and acoustics, their ability to sculpt delicate niches, vast halls, and winding corridors without the aid of metal tools or modern engineering. As one descends the narrow steps into the Hypogeum, the air shifts, cooling and damp, heavy with the scent of ancient dust and the echo of centuries. The walls, carved with intricate spirals and mysterious symbolic patterns, seem to whisper of rituals lost to history, of rites performed in the darkness to commune with forces we may never comprehend. Within its labyrinthine corridors lie three distinct levels, each more enigmatic than the last. The upper level, with its low chambers and oval-shaped niches, appears to have been a space for the living or perhaps the preparation of the dead. The middle level, where the light fades and the air thickens, contains burial niches stacked one atop another, as though attempting to compress the very essence of the dead into the stone itself. And the lower level, the most profound and haunting, presents the central chamber, an almost sacred space whose acoustics amplify the softest whisper into a haunting resonance, a detail that suggests a sophisticated understanding of sound for ritualistic purposes. Human remains, over 7,000 in number, were discovered here, some articulated, others cremated, all meticulously placed, indicating a society that treated death not as an end, but as a continuum, a passage into another dimension or perhaps a conversation with the gods. Alongside the bones, archaeologists found an assortment of pottery, delicate figurines, and small ritual objects, each carefully fashioned, each speaking silently of a culture that prized artistry, spirituality, and a deep connection to both earth and afterlife. The famous Sleeping Lady, a terracotta figure discovered in the Hypogeum, embodies this culture's fascination with the human form and the concept of eternal rest. Its serene posture and rounded features evoke a sense of calm, yet its presence within such a labyrinth hints at rituals far more complex than mere burial. Scholars have long debated the purpose of the Hypogeum. Was it primarily a necropolis, a temple, or a convergence of both, a place where life and death intertwined in shadowed corridors? Even its construction defies full understanding. The rock was carved with such precision that the walls remain smooth and stable millennia later, and the layering of chambers suggests careful planning over generations, perhaps by a society that held secrets passed down orally, each generation contributing to a work that no single individual could complete in a lifetime. When first opened to the modern world, the Hypogeum was immediately recognized as a site of immense archaeological and historical value, yet it also posed dangers. The delicate structure is susceptible to humidity and human interference, and today, only a handful of visitors are allowed each day, guided by experts to ensure its preservation, the chambers still echoing faintly with the voices of the ancients. Every step within the Hypogeum carries a weight of centuries, each chamber a testament to a civilization's ingenuity and their profound contemplation of life, death, and the mysteries beyond. The air itself seems to pulse with stories untold, and even with modern technology, we have only scratched the surface of what lies within its depths, traces of pigments on walls, subtle grooves suggesting now lost decorations, perhaps even hidden chambers yet to be discovered. And yet, for all we have unearthed, for all the painstaking cataloging of artifacts and human remains, the Hypogeum guards its deepest secret jealously. Why did this society invest such extraordinary effort into creating a subterranean world, perfectly insulated from the sun and sky, where sound and space were manipulated with uncanny precision? What ceremonies, what rituals, what voices once filled its echoing halls, and what forces did the ancients believe they could summon or commune with in this carved silence? Today, as the island's sun sets over Malta, casting long shadows across the limestone cliffs, the Hypogeum remains hidden beneath streets and modern buildings, a silent witness to an era we can only glimpse through the faint traces left in stone and bone. Archaeologists continue to study its structure, the placement of its burials, the traces of pigment and decoration, but each discovery seems only to deepen the enigma, revealing a civilization both sophisticated and secretive, intimate with life, death, and the unseen forces that guided their existence. And so, the Hypogeum of Hal-Saflieni endures, a subterranean cathedral of mystery, its walls holding whispers of human devotion, ingenuity, and fear, beckoning us to wonder what it would have been like to walk among its creators, to witness the rituals performed in its echoing chambers, to understand fully why a people would carve a world beneath the earth itself, and to ask, in the chilling silence that follows, whether we have yet discovered all that it was meant to reveal, or if some secrets, like the shadows that linger forever in its deepest halls, are destined never to be unearthed. High in the mist-shrouded mountains of New Zealand, in the year 1986, a team of explorers ventured deep into the echoing voids of Mount Owen's cave systems, driven by curiosity and the hope of uncovering fragments of the land's ancient past. Yet what they stumbled upon was far more astonishing than even the most daring imagination could have painted, for within the damp chamber of darkness, beneath layers of cold rock and untouched silence, they discovered a massive claw, a limb so well preserved, so intact, that it seemed as though the creature it belonged to had perished only yesterday. Its curved talons, sheathed in leathery skin, still bore the texture of life, its sinew and tissue clinging stubbornly to bone, defying the logic of time and decay, and instantly sending a shiver of disbelief through the hardened archaeologists who held it. For in their hands was not just a fragment of fossilized bone but a relic of flesh and form, a tangible remnant of a beast believed lost to the shadows of prehistory thousands of years ago. The claw measured nearly a foot in length, menacingly arched, and its preservation was so extraordinary that some in the group whispered the unthinkable, that it belonged not to a bird, not to a reptile, but perhaps to a dinosaur, a creature that should have vanished from the earth tens of millions of years before man ever walked it. Yet New Zealand has always been a land of anomalies, where evolution carved strange paths, and so the initial awe was soon met with rigorous inquiry. Scientists, gripped by urgency and wonder, began to analyze the specimen, and slowly the truth unraveled, but the truth was no less haunting than the fantasy. The claw belonged not to a dinosaur of the Jurassic Age but to the moa, a giant flightless bird that had once roamed New Zealand's forests in herds, towering up to 12 feet tall, weighing over 500 pounds, and striking awe into all who saw them. Unlike the kiwi, their distant cousin who still scurries shyly in the underbrush, the moa was a colossal grazer, feeding on leaves and twigs, shaping the ecosystem as the land's dominant herbivore, until its fate was sealed by the arrival of the first Polynesian settlers around the 13th century, the ancestors of the Maori. Within just 2 centuries, hunting and habitat destruction drove these magnificent birds to extinction, a vanishing so swift that their echoes seemed to have barely touched the earth before silence fell. And yet here, in the darkened heart of Mount Owen, lay a piece of that vanished world, preserved in chilling perfection. How could it be? For 3,000 years this claw had rested, shielded by the cave's dry and cold conditions, cocooned away from bacteria and decay, as though the mountain itself had guarded it with deliberate secrecy. Radiocarbon dating confirmed that the flesh was indeed ancient, not modern, the skin and keratin layers undeniably authentic remnants of a creature long gone, and still, holding it was like holding time itself, a bridge between the living present and the vanished kingdom of giants. The Maori told stories of the moa, of hunting them with spears, of feasting on their flesh, and weaving cloaks from their feathers, but never in those oral traditions was there any suggestion that fragments of their bodies might still endure, entombed in mountain silence. When the claw was first shown to the public, photographs spread across newspapers and scientific journals, igniting waves of fascination and disbelief. Could a creature of such size truly have roamed so recently, and might, just might, some of them still survive, hidden in New Zealand's dense, mist-laden forests where few humans venture? Expeditions were launched, rumors whispered of enormous bird-like footprints found in the mud, and strange calls echoing through remote valleys at night, but none yielded proof. Still, the claw itself is proof of another kind, proof that time sometimes pauses, that life can linger long after death, suspended between worlds, a reminder that extinction is not merely a word in a textbook but a haunting reality etched in flesh. The Mount Owen claw is now kept under the care of the Museum of New Zealand Te Papa Tongarewa, safeguarded under strict preservation conditions, where visitors can gaze upon its serrated arcs, its leathered skin, and feel the hair rise upon their arms as they imagine the thunderous presence of the moa. Scientists study it still, probing its DNA, hoping to unlock genetic secrets that might tell us more about the lost giant and perhaps even fuel dreams of resurrection through cloning or de-extinction projects. Yet the claw resists surrendering all its truths. Why this particular piece endured while others decayed into dust remains a puzzle. Why it looks so terrifyingly fresh, like the hand of a creature still alive, remains a riddle that no explanation fully satisfies. And deeper still lies the unsettling possibility: if this claw could sleep in the mountain's darkness for 3 millennia, untouched and waiting, what else lies hidden in caves, beneath glaciers, under peat bogs, fragments of creatures we thought gone forever, waiting to be unearthed, staring back at us with claws, teeth, or eyes? When you stand before the Mount Owen claw, staring at its darkened talon and the ghost of muscle stretched upon it, you cannot help but feel the uneasy breath of something unresolved, as though the moa's story is not finished, as though extinction may not be absolute. And so a question lingers, unspoken yet deafening: was the claw truly the last touch of a vanished giant, or is it a sign that somewhere, in the veiled wilderness of New Zealand, shadows still stir and colossal footsteps still fall in the night? Deep in the archives of forbidden archaeology lies a tale that refuses to fade, a tale of glittering perfection cut into the shape of a human head, polished so finely that light glides across its surface like water, a relic that has ignited more debates, legends, and dark suspicions than almost any other artifact of the modern age: the crystal skulls. The story begins in 1924, in the steaming jungles of Belize, where a British adventurer and seeker of the lost past, Frederick Albert Mitchell Hedges, led an expedition into the ruins of the ancient Maya city of Lebanton. It was there, as his adopted daughter Anna Mitchell Hedges later recalled, that she stumbled upon a shaft of sunlight breaking through collapsed stones, revealing a gleam so unnatural, so piercing, that it drew her closer. Brushing away the dust and vines, she lifted from the ground a skull carved from a single block of pure quartz crystal, transparent and flawless, its jaw removable, its features eerily lifelike. This discovery, soon to be known as the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, would mark the beginning of a saga that continues to haunt scholars, scientists, and seekers alike. Who carved it? How? And why? For decades the skull was shrouded in mystery, passed from hand to hand, studied by experts who could not agree. Some claimed it bore the marks of modern tools, others that it showed no trace of machining whatsoever, as though it had been shaped by some unknown technique that left the crystal unfractured, a feat even modern diamond tools struggle to achieve. Optical experts from Hewlett-Packard examined the skull in the 1970s and reported that its precision was baffling, that carving against the crystal's natural axis without shattering it should have been impossible. Yet here it was, an object so perfect that the human eye finds itself unsettled by its cold symmetry. And the Mitchell Hedges skull was not alone. Whispers spread of other crystal skulls scattered across museums and private collections: the Paris skull housed in the Musée du Quai Branly, the British Museum skull, the Smithsonian skull, the one in the Mexican National Museum of Anthropology. Each bore slightly different features, some crudely shaped, others unnervingly detailed, but all of them sculpted from the same luminous quartz. The stories surrounding their origins diverged wildly. Some said they were created by ancient Maya or Aztec priests as ceremonial objects, repositories of knowledge, or instruments for channeling the gods. Others claimed they were Atlantean relics, survivors from a vanished supercivilization whose secrets had been scattered across the earth. And some, carried by the fire of imagination, believed the skulls were gifts from beings not of this world, interstellar visitors who encoded messages of humanity's destiny within crystalline memory. What fueled these theories were not just the objects themselves but the legends woven around them. According to tales whispered among New Age circles in the 20th century, there were not one or two but 13 crystal skulls, each holding a fragment of forgotten wisdom, each possessing the power to heal, to reveal visions, to unlock the mysteries of time itself. Only when brought together, it was said, would they unveil a truth too vast for human understanding. Yet as alluring as these stories are, the shadows of doubt fall heavily. Investigations in the 1990s subjected the British Museum skull to electron microscope analysis, revealing marks consistent with 19th-century rotary wheels and abrasives. The Smithsonian skull showed similar signs. Could it be, skeptics asked, that these were not ancient at all but Victorian curiosities, carved in Europe and passed off as pre-Columbian treasures to meet the hunger of collectors? Dealers in antiquities during the 1800s were notorious for crafting objects to satisfy European fascination with the mysteries of the New World. If so, then were the crystal skulls nothing more than elaborate forgeries, romantic fakes designed to enthrall but not to enlighten? Still, even if some skulls were exposed as 19th-century creations, the enigma of the Mitchell-Hedges skull refuses to die. Unlike the museum specimens, its history cannot be easily dismissed, its craftsmanship remains a technical riddle, and its presence carries a strange aura that has unsettled even the most hardened observers. Anna Mitchell-Hedges herself kept it close until her death in 2007, exhibiting it at paranormal gatherings, allowing seekers to meditate upon its gleaming surface, swearing that it emitted strange energies, that people who gazed into its depths often experienced visions, trances, or dreams that felt not their own. Those who touched it sometimes reported waves of heat or cold, as if the stone were alive, as if it stored within itself an echo of human memory. In modern times, the skulls have taken on new life in the popular imagination. They have appeared in novels, films, and television, elevated to icons of mystery culture. Yet beneath the sensationalism, the deeper question lingers: what is the true origin of these crystalline heads? Are they relics of a lost technology, artifacts carved with forgotten methods that defy modern comprehension? Are they mere fabrications of ambitious 19th-century artisans? Or are they something more, objects whose purpose extends beyond human fabrication, beyond the limits of historical explanation? Today, the Mitchell-Hedges skull resides in private hands, carefully guarded, rarely displayed. The Paris skull rests quietly in its museum case. The British Museum skull sits under glass, stripped by officialdom of its mystique, labeled as 19th century, a curiosity. And yet, even so, visitors linger before it, transfixed by its glint, as though it speaks to something ancient within us. What remains certain is that quartz itself holds peculiar qualities, piezoelectric properties, the ability to oscillate with precision, the same properties that drive watches, radios, and computers. Quartz is a natural recorder of vibration, of energy, of memory. Could it be that, whether ancient or modern, the crystal skulls were created with a purpose still beyond our grasp, repositories not of folklore but of information waiting to be unlocked? Legends tell of voices whispering from within, of eyes that glow in firelight, of dreams that foretell disaster. Rational science may scoff, yet the allure endures. The deeper one peers into the cold gleam of a crystal skull, the more it seems to gaze back, impassive, patient, carrying secrets in silence. And so we are left with a riddle sharp as glass and deep as time itself. If these skulls are but fakes, why does their presence unsettle us so profoundly? If they are truly ancient, what hand carved them with such precision? And if they are neither one nor the other, but something far stranger, then what is it that waits within their crystalline depths, watching, waiting, perhaps whispering, for the moment when humanity is finally ready to listen? Deep in the frozen wilderness of Siberia, where endless tundra stretches beneath a sky of steel and winters descend like eternal night, a discovery emerged that would shake the boundaries of archaeology and leave even hardened scientists unsettled. It was 1993, high in the Altai Mountains near the border of Mongolia, when a team led by Russian archaeologist Natalia Polismak unearthed something extraordinary from beneath layers of permafrost. Beneath a burial mound, sealed for over 2,000 years, lay a woman, her body encased in ice, her skin still bearing tattoos of mythic animals, her face frozen in silence, her story whispering across millennia. She became known as the Ice Maiden or the Siberian Princess, and she was not the only one. Over the decades, dozens of such frozen bodies have surfaced across Siberia, preserved so eerily intact that they seem as if time itself refused to consume them. These mummies belong to the Pazyryk people, a nomadic Scythian culture who roamed the steppe between the 6th and 3rd centuries BC, warriors and horsemen, artisans and mystics whose traditions thrived at the edge of known civilization. The permafrost had entombed their dead with a precision no tomb of stone could match, locking flesh, clothing, hair, even grave goods in a time capsule of ice. The Ice Maiden's coffin, carved from a hollowed larch log, held not only her body but garments of felt and silk, Chinese mirrors, intricate wooden carvings, and the remains of 6 horses sacrificed to carry her into the afterlife. But it was her tattoos that ignited the imagination of the world, coiling stags, twisting griffins, and horned beasts inked in dark pigment, designs that echoed across Scythian artifacts from the Black Sea to Central Asia. They were not decorations alone, they were talismans, emblems of status, perhaps even maps of a spiritual journey. Some scholars believe she was a priestess, a shaman who bridged the realms of the living and the dead, entrusted with guiding her people through ritual and myth. Others argue she may have been a noblewoman, her burial reflecting wealth and reverence. Yet mystery clings to her like the frost of her grave, for the Ice Maiden was unlike others. Her body bore signs of illness, possibly breast cancer, and traces of cannabis found near her suggest she may have used it for ritual or pain relief. Still, why was she buried so far from her community, alone, with such rich offerings? The question lingers like breath in the cold air. The discovery was not without consequence. Local Altai people, the indigenous descendants of the land, protested that disturbing her tomb unleashed misfortune, pointing to earthquakes and illnesses that followed the excavation. To them, the princess was a sacred ancestor, and her removal was an act of violation. Even today, many in the region insist her spirit wanders restlessly, bringing imbalance to the world around her. Her body now rests in the Republican National Museum in Gorno-Altaysk, kept under controlled conditions, her tattoos illuminated by faint museum light, but the debate rages on: should she remain in scientific hands, or be returned to the earth that once protected her? Beyond the Ice Maiden, other mummies of the Pazyryk culture have surfaced, revealing astonishing detail about life on the Siberian steppe. Warriors buried with weapons and armor, chiefs laid to rest with entire herds of horses, women adorned in elaborate textiles and jewelry. Their faces, though shriveled by time, still bear expressions of resolve, sorrow, or serenity. Their horses, buried with saddles and bridles, suggest a people whose bond with these animals was inseparable, for the horse was not only transportation but companion, warrior, and symbol of freedom. Excavations have revealed carpets woven with incredible precision, wooden chariots, drinking horns, and even fragments of cannabis seeds and vessels for fermented drinks, painting a portrait of a culture far more complex than nomads alone. The Pazyryk were connected to vast trade networks reaching Persia, China, and the Mediterranean, their burial goods carrying traces of distant civilizations. Yet what emerges most hauntingly from the ice is the preservation of human fragility, skin stretched but still marked with ink, hair still braided as if its owner might awaken, clothing stitched with care by hands long vanished. Time collapses when one looks upon them, as if 2,000 years dissolve in a blink. Still, questions remain. Why did the Pazyryk practice such elaborate burial rites, investing immense effort into tombs hidden beneath kurgans of stone and ice? Were they safeguarding their dead against enemies, or was ice itself considered sacred, a vessel to preserve the soul? The Ice Maiden's tattoos resemble not only animals but mythic guardians, hybrids of beasts and birds, suggesting a cosmology where death was not an end but a passage guarded by creatures of liminal power. Some archaeologists whisper that these tattoos were more than spiritual art. They may encode stories, laws, or even warnings we no longer understand. What is perhaps most chilling is how fragile the boundary is between preservation and destruction. For centuries, the ice kept these bodies untouched, but global warming now threatens to erase them forever. As permafrost thaws across Siberia, countless graves may decompose before they are ever found, their stories lost to mud and rot. The Ice Maiden was spared by accident, rescued at the last possible moment, but how many others are dissolving into oblivion beneath the warming tundra? Scientists race against time, yet each excavation stirs ethical storms. Should we disturb the dead for knowledge? Or are we trespassers stealing from the sanctity of ancient spirits? In the quiet halls of the museum where the Ice Maiden lies, her gaze blank, her skin still whispering with ink, visitors speak of an unshakable presence, as though she watches from behind glass. Some claim dreams follow them after leaving, dreams of white horses galloping across endless snow, of a woman standing at the edge of shadow, her arms raised in ritual. Others recall a sense of deep unease, as if the air itself tightened. And perhaps that is the truest legacy of the Siberian ice mummies. They are not relics of the past alone, but emissaries of mystery, calling across centuries, reminding us that the line between life and death, history and legend, is never as solid as we imagine. For if the ice can hold the dead so perfectly, what else does it conceal, waiting to rise when the earth cracks open again? And if the Ice Maiden is not merely an ancestor but a guardian, what does she guard against? And what will happen the day her watch is truly broken? Beneath the blazing Mediterranean sun, on the rugged island of Sardinia, there stands a silent army of stone that has watched millennia rise and fall, a forest of megaliths born from the Bronze Age yet still defying time, their meaning shrouded in shadow. These are the nuragi, towering beacons of stone stacked without mortar, conical fortresses rising from the hillsides, some soaring more than 60 feet into the air, built over 3,000 years ago by hands that left behind no written word, no clear explanation, only massive walls of basalt and limestone fitted with such precision that they endure earthquakes, storms, and centuries of neglect. Discovered not in a single moment, but rather as a continuous presence scattered across the land, the nuragi are everywhere, over 7,000 of them, so many that Sardinia itself feels like an open-air puzzle, each tower whispering its own story, yet none revealing the full truth. Who built them? The Nuragic people, a civilization that flourished on this island from around 1800 BC to the Roman conquest, but beyond that name, beyond pottery shards and bronze tools, we know little. Archaeologists have excavated chambers deep inside these stone towers, finding winding staircases, domed rooms, secret corridors leading to the unknown, but the purpose of these structures remains debated. Were they fortresses to guard against invading enemies? Temples to the gods of sky and earth? Residences for chiefs and kings? Or astronomical observatories aligned with the sun, the moon, and the stars? Some nuragi stand alone on ridges overlooking the sea, others cluster in villages with huts and meeting halls surrounding them, and within their ruins, objects tell fragments of a story, miniature bronze figurines depicting warriors, ships, animals, and divine beings, intricate metalwork suggesting trade with distant lands. Ceramic vessels that once held wine, grain, oil, the lifeblood of an ancient society. And yet, there is something uncanny about their scale, their distribution, their persistence across every corner of Sardinia, as if the island itself was turned into a vast ceremonial landscape, stone by stone, tower by tower, a network of monuments whose full design can no longer be read. Some scholars believe the nuragi formed the heart of a theocratic society, where priest-kings ruled from these high towers, summoning people to rituals in sacred wells and meeting houses, connecting the living with the divine. Others argue that their defensive power is undeniable, the walls are thick, the vantage points perfect for spotting enemies, and bronze weapons found nearby hint at conflict. But then there are those who notice celestial alignments. Certain towers face solstice sunrises, certain wells mirror constellations in their waters, as though the builders mapped the heavens in stone. The Nuragic people vanish into obscurity, but their architecture remains a silent testimony. Roman conquerors found the towers already ancient, medieval chroniclers mentioned them with awe, and modern explorers still marvel at their scale. The most famous among them, Su Nuraxi di Baramini, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, rises in central Sardinia like a petrified castle, its central tower dating back to the 16th century BC, surrounded by bastions, turrets, and a labyrinth of huts where daily life once unfolded. Excavations there revealed a society both practical and mysterious, food storage pits, ovens, and tools alongside religious artifacts and ceremonial spaces. Imagine the smoke of fires rising at dusk, villagers gathering as drums echoed off the stones, rituals carried out in the shadows of massive walls, voices chanting to deities whose names have been lost, faces illuminated by the flicker of flames. And what of the strange bronze figurines, so delicately cast, showing warriors with horned helmets, long cloaks, and shields, stylized ships with curved prows, winged beings that may have represented gods or myths? Were these offerings placed in sacred spaces, tokens of devotion, or symbols of a society with connections across the Mediterranean, trading with Mycenaeans, Phoenicians, and perhaps even Egyptians? The Nuragic culture was no isolated tribe. Traces suggest wide networks of contact, but why then did their written voice never emerge? Why did they not leave inscriptions, records, chronicles of their beliefs and rulers? Perhaps their stories were oral, carried by songs now long silenced, their language swallowed by time. Even their burial practices remain puzzling. Giant communal tombs known as Tombs of the Giants dot the landscape, immense slabs of stone forming gateways into chambers where the dead were laid, perhaps in collective remembrance of ancestry, perhaps to maintain ties with the spirit world. These tombs align too with celestial events, hinting again at a cosmology encoded in stone. And in the depths of Sardinia's land lie sacred wells, subterranean temples carved with mathematical precision, where steps descend into underground chambers filled with water that reflects the sky above, an architectural devotion to the union of earth, water, and cosmos. So what were the Nuragi truly? Defensive towers, temples, residences, observatories, or all of these at once? They stand as mute guardians of an untold story, their builders gone, their purpose debated, their silence unbroken. Today, Sardinia preserves them as treasures of its identity, their dark passageways open to tourists and scholars, their stones still cold to the touch, their staircases still spiraling upward into mystery. Su Nuraxi at Baramini, Nurig Santu Antine, Nurig Lhasa, each carries the same enigma, and yet each raises new questions. Imagine climbing one at dusk, the wind sweeping over the plains, the stones radiating the heat of the day, and from the top, seeing a horizon dotted with other towers, as though giants once populated the island and left behind their playground. Who were the Nuragic people really? A powerful kingdom forgotten by history? A priestly society building cosmic temples? A warrior culture locked in endless battles? Or something stranger, something that defies the categories we impose? The Nuragi will not answer, they endure, stone stacked upon stone, a riddle in the heart of the Mediterranean. And so the question lingers. What force drove an ancient people to cover an island with towers of stone, monuments of staggering labor and intent, and why, after leaving behind thousands of these colossal markers, did they vanish into silence, leaving only shadows, only echoes, only towers that stare across time as if guarding a secret they will never reveal? Beneath the shifting dunes of Oman's Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, a desert so vast and merciless it swallows entire horizons, lies a story whispered in both scripture and legend, a tale of a city lost to time, a place once so rich, so radiant, that it earned the name Atlantis of the Sands. For centuries, Bedouin tribes spoke of Ubar, a city of towers rising above the desert, a place of unimaginable wealth built on the trade of frankincense, the resin more valuable than gold in the ancient world. Frankincense caravans, hundreds of camels long, once marched from the Dhofar Mountains toward Arabia and beyond, carrying with them the fragrant lifeblood of commerce, and at the crossroads of this trade stood Ubar, flourishing in secrecy until its name became a myth. In the Quran, it is called Iram of the Pillars, a city of excess punished by God, swallowed by sand as retribution for pride. Medieval travelers like Marco Polo repeated the tales, claiming merchants whispered of a buried kingdom beneath dunes where towers glimmered under the moonlight, yet no map bore its name, no chronicle placed it on earth with certainty. For centuries, skeptics dismissed Ubar as allegory, a desert mirage born of oral tradition. But in 1984, modern eyes pierced the veil of myth. NASA's Space Shuttle Challenger, orbiting high above, used radar to peer through the sand. Ancient caravan routes, invisible on the ground, appeared as faint scars etched across the desert skin. These lines converged in southern Oman, at a place near Shizr, a lonely outpost where locals spoke of ruins buried deep. Led by explorer Sir Ranulph Fiennes, archaeologist Juris Surins, and a joint team of Omani and American researchers, an excavation began in 1990. What they uncovered stunned the world. Beneath a Bedouin fort lay the remains of a vast settlement, walls and towers that had once stood proud, now collapsed into a massive sinkhole. Radiocarbon dating, pottery shards, and artifacts pointed to centuries of occupation, from as early as 2800 BC, when Mesopotamian trade flourished, to the first millennium AD. This, they claimed, was Ubar, the city of legend, its destruction perhaps caused not by divine wrath but by geology itself, the collapse of a giant limestone cavern upon which its towers had been built. The city had literally fallen into the earth, and shifting dunes concealed its bones. The find electrified imaginations, for here at last was evidence tying myth to reality. Ubar was no mirage, it had stood at the crossroads of civilizations, a fortress trading post where frankincense caravans passed, guarded by walls, stocked with water, enriched by merchants. Excavations revealed pottery from Rome, Persia, and India, beads and coins tracing the network of exchange. The frankincense trees of Dhofar, whose resin was burned in temples from Jerusalem to Athens, were the true foundation of Ubar's wealth. Without them, empires would not have perfumed their rituals nor embalmed their dead, for frankincense was sacred, its smoke believed to carry prayers to the heavens. And yet, Ubar was fragile. The collapse of its well, the drying of aquifers, or the fall of its fortress into the sinkhole may have marked its end, just as climate shifted and sea trade replaced caravan routes. By the 5th century AD, the city that had once thrived was gone, its memory kept alive only in stories of divine punishment and whispers of towers beneath the sands. Today, the site at Shizr holds little more than crumbled stone, well, and the yawning mouth of the sinkhole that devoured the fort. Archaeologists have fenced the ruins, tourists wander its lonely towers, but the desert presses close, dunes threatening to cover it once more. Artifacts from Ubar rest in the museums of Oman, fragments of pottery, beads of glass, incense burners scarred by fire, humble remnants of a city once legendary. Yet debate endures. Was Shizr truly Ubar, the fabled Atlantis of the sands, or merely a waystation on the incense road, confused by time with a greater city still buried elsewhere? Critics argue that Ubar was not a single city but a region, a network of settlements whose memory coalesced into legend. Others insist that vast ruins still sleep beneath the empty quarter, waiting for satellites or shifting dunes to expose them. Even the name, Atlantis of the Sands, first given by T. E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia, still echoes, conjuring visions of a majestic kingdom swallowed whole. And perhaps that is the true power of Ubar's mystery, it lies not only in ruins uncovered but in the silence of what remains unseen. The Rub al-Khali is larger than France, a sea of sand that buries everything in its path. Countless caravan routes disappear beneath it, fortresses lost, temples drowned, cities erased. If Ubar's story was not singular, if others lie beneath, then the desert is a graveyard of forgotten civilizations, its dunes the keepers of secrets no spade has touched. In Shizr's sinkhole, the wind howls through broken stones, and one can imagine the roar of towers collapsing, the cries of merchants, the slow swallowing of a city by shifting earth. To walk there is to feel the breath of legend against your neck, to sense that time itself has thinned. For Ubar was found, and yet remains lost, discovered yet elusive, a city that exists in both stone and myth, in science and in scripture. It raises a question that unsettles. If the sands can conceal an entire city for thousands of years, what else do they hide? And when the dunes shift again, what other worlds will rise from beneath, glittering for an instant before being claimed once more by the desert's endless, merciless embrace? Beneath the frozen silence of Norway's ancient cliffs, hidden in rock shelters carved by time and glaciers, lie the whispers of an age long vanished, the Ice Age, when humans were not masters of the world but survivors clinging to its edges, leaving behind messages etched in ochre and charcoal that still ignite questions thousands of years later, for in caves scattered across Nordland, Trondelag, and Alta, explorers in the 19th and 20th centuries stumbled upon faded yet undeniable visions painted on stone. Herds of reindeer, elk, and bears moving across walls as though alive, hunting scenes frozen mid-flight, and strange human-like figures dancing with antlers on their heads, shadowy shamans who blurred the line between animal and spirit, man and beast, a window into a culture that lived in the chill of the last ice age and painted not for beauty alone but for ritual, survival, and something more elusive, something we may never fully understand, for these were not careless drawings but carefully placed, often in the darkest recesses of the cave where torches barely flickered, pigment painstakingly ground from iron-rich stones, mixed with animal fat, and applied with fingers, reeds, or primitive brushes made from hair, techniques that modern scientists have confirmed through microscopic analysis, proving that the colors of blood-red ochre and shadow-black charcoal were chosen deliberately, their meaning deeper than aesthetics, their persistence across 10,000 years a testament to intention. The paintings were first noted by locals in the late 1800s, shepherds and farmers stumbling into rock shelters while tending flocks, but it was not until the 1930s and 40s that archaeologists began to catalog them systematically, uncovering panels in Helgeskjellet Cave, in coastal Norway, and later in the storied rock art of Alta, today a UNESCO World Heritage Site, where entire cliffsides bear hundreds of figures carved and painted, telling stories of migration, hunting, fishing, and perhaps worship. Who made them? Radiocarbon dating of torch remains, soot, and bone fragments suggests that the oldest of these images were painted more than 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, at the close of the Ice Age, by Mesolithic hunter-gatherers whose descendants would later shape the Sami culture of northern Scandinavia, though direct continuity remains debated, for what survives is fragmentary, traces of footprints, stone tools discarded in the dust, pigments clinging stubbornly to stone. These hunters lived in a harsh world where glaciers still loomed on the horizon, and the animals they painted, reindeer in herds, elk with towering antlers, seals and fish, were not simply subjects of art but lifelines, sources of food, clothing, and spiritual connection, for to depict them was perhaps to honor them, to ensure their return each season, or to cross the boundary between the seen and unseen worlds. Many scholars believe the antlered figures represent shamans, individuals who entered trance through drum and chant, guided by spirits of the hunt, and that the paintings themselves were part of rituals performed deep in the caves, where sound echoes eerily, and the flicker of firelight makes painted animals leap and dance on the walls, a prehistoric cinema that carried power beyond explanation. What is most striking is not only the artistry, proportions accurate, movements fluid, but the intention of placement, for many images are tucked into narrow passageways, as if only those initiated could see them, while others sprawl across walls and panels like grand narratives, stories told for generations without words, relying only on pigment and stone. The caves themselves hold secrets too, layers of ash suggesting repeated visits, bones of animals that may have been offerings, and in some cases, small stone altars, all hinting that these sites were sanctuaries, not dwellings, reserved for the sacred act of creation and communication with forces beyond human control. And yet, even as we decipher their methods, through chemical analysis of pigments, through digital scanning that reveals faded lines invisible to the eye, the true purpose remains elusive. Were these records of hunts past, teaching tools for the young, or invocations for hunts yet to come? Were they the visions of shamans carried back from trance, or the communal prayers of a tribe desperate for survival? Each theory explains something, yet none explains all. Today, Some of these paintings still rest in their original caves, protected by barriers to preserve them from human breath and touch, while others have been documented in museums, with replicas created for the public, but the originals, fragile, fading, are left in the darkness, just as their creators intended, hidden from casual gaze, revealed only to those who seek them with reverence. The Alta Rock art site draws visitors from across the world, yet the painted caves of Norway remain less known, whispered about in archaeological circles, their significance overshadowed by the famous caves of France and Spain, though they are no less powerful, no less haunting, for they speak with the same voice of humanity's first storytellers, the artists of survival. And still the mystery deepens. Why do some figures wear animal skins or antlers, merging with beasts? Why do certain panels feature symbols we cannot interpret? Spirals, dots, and grids whose meaning died with their makers? Why, in a world so consumed by survival, did our ancestors spend precious hours, even days, creating images that no one outside their small group might ever see? Perhaps they believed that painting bound them to the spirits of the land, that pigment fixed life to stone, that by capturing an elk in ochre they ensured its flesh in the next hunt, or perhaps they sought to leave a mark that outlived them, a voice carved into eternity, whispering across millennia. We cannot ask them, and so we are left with fragments, shadows, and questions, staring at the red lines that curve into the shape of a reindeer, wondering if the artist's hand trembled with cold or awe, imagining the firelight dancing on those walls while chants echoed and the cave seemed alive. And in that silence, in that ancient echo, we realize that the paintings are not simply art, they are a dialogue across time, a plea from a people long gone to be remembered, to be felt, to be known. Yet as much as we learn, the greatest enigma endures, for standing in the dark before these Ice Age visions, you cannot help but ask, were they painting the world they saw, or a world that saw them? High in the rugged hills of northern Syria, on the edge of the Afrin Valley, lie the silent ruins of a temple that once echoed with ritual chants, the flicker of firelight, and the heavy footfall of something, or someone. Far larger than any human we know today, a sight first brought to light in the 1950s when villagers stumbled upon colossal carved stones buried beneath the soil, leading archaeologists to uncover what became known as the Dara temple, a structure dating back to the Iron Age, around 1300 BCE, contemporaneous with the biblical temples of Solomon, yet unlike anything else in the Near East, for here, pressed into the very threshold of the temple itself, are footprints carved into the basalt, each one nearly a meter long, so large that no mortal foot could have made them, and arranged in such a way that they appear to walk into the sacred chamber as if an invisible giant god once strode across the threshold and into the sanctuary, and it is this eerie detail that has haunted researchers and visitors alike for decades, these marks that cannot be dismissed as mere decoration, for they seem deliberate, purposeful, symbolic, as though meant to show the presence of a divine being physically entering the house of worship, reminding those who approached that this was no ordinary temple but a dwelling of a god who could leave a trace so immense upon stone, and as the excavations continued, archaeologists revealed the grandeur of Dara. Massive walls decorated with reliefs of lions, sphinxes, winged beings, and mythical creatures, their forms still sharp despite the passing of 3,000 years, a vivid reminder of the hybrid mythologies that once flourished here at the crossroads of Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and the Levant, where Hittites, Arameans, and later Assyrians mingled their beliefs and left behind temples to storm gods, fertility deities, and celestial rulers, yet nowhere else do we see footprints such as these, and so the mystery deepens, for what were they meant to convey, and why here, at Dara, in a temple so remote yet so striking, a place that once stood proudly until it was reduced to rubble in modern times, tragically damaged by war and bombardment in 2018, leaving many of its ancient stones shattered, though the photographs and records taken before that destruction preserve the eerie imprints that continue to baffle us, for the footprints measure nearly 3 feet long, and the spacing between them suggests a stride of several meters, too vast for any human or animal, leading some to wonder whether they were intended to represent the literal path of a god, walking into his own dwelling, or whether they were part of a ritual reenactment in which priests guided initiates along the divine steps, forcing them to imagine themselves in the shadow of giants, humbled by the scale of the sacred. But still the question lingers, why carve footprints at all, when no other temple in the region bears such a feature, when the more common tradition was to depict deities in reliefs or statues, never to imply their actual footsteps pressing into the earth, unless, of course, the artisans of Dara wished to immortalize something they believed had truly happened, a visitation not of myth but of reality, a giant presence whose weight left marks upon the very threshold of time. And when we think of the biblical traditions that speak of Nephilim, giant beings born of gods and mortals, or the Sumerian epics that tell of towering Anunnaki who walked among men, it becomes harder to dismiss the Dara footprints as simple symbolism, for they stand as a physical echo of those ancient stories, carved deliberately into basalt stone, designed to endure, to be seen and felt underfoot by worshippers who entered the temple, who themselves must have trembled as they stepped into the same path where the god was imagined, or remembered to have walked. And today, though much of Dara lies in ruins, the memory of those footsteps persists, not only in scholarly papers but in whispered speculation among those drawn to the enigma of giants, lost civilizations, and forgotten truths, because unlike a myth told in words, these carvings cannot be denied, they are tangible, measurable, real, and yet inexplicable. Their purpose lost with the priests who once tended the fires, their meaning obscured by centuries of conquest, abandonment, and finally war, leaving us only with the silent question of who, or what, once stepped here, and why they wanted the world to remember, a question that grows louder in the stillness of the ruins, where stone feet still stride into the unknown, asking us even now, were these merely symbols of gods, or the immortalized traces of giants who truly walked the earth? The mysteries don't end here. If this intrigued you, hit like and subscribe for more. And we'd be curious to hear your thoughts. We'd love to know what you think.